So good morning, happy Memorial Day. Don't really know that, do you? I don't either. But it is a big deal though, because it's not go to the lake day or go have a party day or all that. We celebrate it, but the origins of Memorial Day are for us to spend a moment remembering people who gave their lives for us, people in our armed services. And my dad served in the Korean War. My dad's still alive. He'll be here in a couple of weeks, so maybe you get a chance to meet him. He's a great guy. But, it's a big deal to me to recognize people who have served in our armed forces because, they're putting their lives on the line for us day after day. And most of the time, we don't even think about it because they are patrolling, they are watching, they are taking care, making sure that things are okay. And the situations that are around us. And if you've ever been in another country, you don't sleep the same way there in another country that you might sleep here because you're thinking, there is an uneasiness that's there sometimes. And so I'm very appreciative for those people. Or maybe you have someone in your family who gave their life in protecting us. And so I'm really thankful for them. And I want to just take a moment, whether it's at LaGrange or in our traditions venue or here in Lives this morning. If you have served in our armed forces, would you stand for just a moment so we could recognize you? Awesome. Thank you. And I promise you, as long as I'm the pastor here, we will always honor our folks who have served in armed services and our first responders, because that's a huge, huge deal to me. And I think that we should show those folks honor. And the other thing I want to let you know about is that we had our Spaces and Places offering. We did that for 3 weeks, and so that we could get a new video system at a LaGrange campus because theirs is about to fall apart, and also to do some things in our traditions venue and to do some things for our online campus as well. And so in 3 weeks, we have given $62,676.16. So I think that's awesome. Way to go. All right? I had a couple of people ask me, are they going to still be able to give to Spaces and Places? And yes, and so we're going to leave that in place so that as God prompts people and says, I would like to give something specifically to enhancing a space or starting a new place, that we'll have some funds available for that. And so we'll give updates on that pretty regularly so you'll know what's going on. And we want to be transparent as we possibly can be, and no secrets. Secrets are bad things. So confidentiality is one thing, and secrets are not such a good thing. I wear a size 14 shoe, just so you know. Don't buy me any shoes. They're not for sale. Trust me, I've been shopping for shoes size 14 since I was 12. I was this tall and wore these shoes when I was 12 years old, and all I've done is gotten fat since then. So that's all I've done is put on weight. You say, Arthur, you're not fat. You should have seen me when I was 12 years old and this tall. So anyway, I want to tell y'all about the best meal I ever had. The best meal I ever had was at Tony's Ice Cream. Now, Tony's Ice Cream is a place in my hometown, and they have really good cheeseburgers there. They have no French fries. Otherwise, it would be maybe the best place on the planet to eat. But they've got great cheeseburgers, and they got a few other things that are pretty good. They make these colossal milkshakes that will absolutely change your life. And they're really known for their milkshakes and their ice cream because they've been making it there since the 1930s. And it's got some kind of weird, strange recipe, I'm sure. But anyway, it's delicious. And so from my little town, people would drive from a long way away to come get Tony's Ice Cream. And this building is old and decrepit. And there's somebody who works there, and she pretty much looks like Jabba the Hutt. In that she never thinks anything is funny. and she just stares at people. And you can come up and say the funniest thing in the world to her, and she just stares at you. Somebody can get angry at her, and she just stares. I always used to call her Mrs. T because she looked like Mr. T's wife. If you remember that guy with all the gold jewelry. I mean, I'm like, how do you hold your neck up? Because she's only like 76 pounds. She's a tiny woman. But anyway, so it's a great place to eat. So my friend and I, we went up there one afternoon. And in the middle of the afternoon at Tony's Ice Cream, 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the afternoon, there's nobody there except people who can't figure out how to get into jail. And people who are, dads hanging out with children because they're like, I cannot handle being at home with my child anymore, so I brought my child here. People who are just, they can't. It's the middle of the day. If you're an adult, why are you there eating ice cream? And especially if you're not retired or whatever. So, but anyway, we're there, and it's packed. It's 2:30 in the afternoon. It's the middle of the summer, and we walk in there, and there's a jukebox. Now, there hasn't always been a jukebox there, and if you don't know what a jukebox is, that's this thing you put money in, and it plays music. It's sort of like your iPhone is. You put money in it, and it plays music. Anyway, we walked over there, and this new jukebox, it was 10 plays for $1. I'm like, that's the deal. And so my friend and I decided we would get some change, and so we got 30 dimes and said, okay, we're going to do 30 songs because we were planning on being there for a while, and we wanted our jam playing while we were there. But then we decided it would be even better if we put something special to play. And we noticed that one of the songs that was available was The Gambler by Kenny Rogers. Now, I know some of you are thinking, who is Kenny Rogers, The Gambler, what is that? And so I'm going to ruin your life, right? It was a warm summer's evening on a train bound for nowhere. Met up with a gambler, that guy. You got to know when to hold him, when to fold him, right? Every man on the planet has said that. Going on a date for a girl, well, you got to know when to hold him, when to fold him, brother, right? So that song was there, and I said to my friend, we should play that song 30 times. And he said, that might be fun. So we took 30 dimes, loaded it up, and then sat down to enjoy our meal. Now, the first time you hear that song and you haven't heard it in a while, you go, interesting choice. And you see people kind of go, hold them, fold them, kind of singing along a little bit. The second time it plays, people start to think, some of them played the same song twice. Or, this is a really long song. The third time that song plays, people start to get a little irritated. Or they think, this is a really long, extended version of this song. The fourth time it plays, people are starting to get restless. The fifth time it plays, there's a man who bangs the table with his kids. I think he just got his 30-day anger management chip. He comes a little unglued. Jabba the Hutt throws a milkshake. And I'm thinking, this is the best meal I've ever had. The sixth time it plays, a couple people get out of their seats to go and talk with the people behind the counter about, is there something wrong with this machine? Now, my friend who's with me, he's smarter than I am because I'm starting to push Kenny Rogers the Gambler 7 times in a row, and he says, wait a minute. We should play Lucille. As in, you picked a fine time to leave me, Lucille, 4 hungry children and a crop in the field. I've had some good times, I've had some bad times, but this time the hurting won't heal, Lucille. That song. And so, after 6 times of playing the Gambler, and the 7th time becomes Lucille, people there's audible expressions of joy in the room. Things are changing. Grown men are crying, tears of joy that the gambler is no longer playing. And then there's much rejoicing. There's relief. Oh, it's a different song. But then song number 8 is back to the gambler. My anger management friend completely loses it. And so I'm just enjoying it, and we're just watching it play. So after 11 times, someone unplugged the jukebox. And then 2 weeks later, I went back, and the jukebox was no longer there. So here's the deal. So what? So here's the deal. You get tired of the gambler. You get tired of the same song over and over again. You get tired of sitting in traffic. You get tired of paying too much money for a head of lettuce or for a tank of gas. You get aggravated with all kinds of things, but you never get tired of people being merciful towards you. You might get tired of being merciful towards someone else and say, I have shown that person enough mercy. Or you may say that somebody else has shown somebody too much mercy and they should step in and discipline that person and they should do something and that person better straighten up because I've had enough. But we never get tired of people being merciful toward us. We don't like it when someone is judging us, but we're okay judging other people. We don't care if people are judgmental toward others, but don't be judgmental toward me. And so as we walk through the Beatitudes these last few weeks, different to make a difference, you see there's this pattern coming. And Jesus, this is the first time that Jesus sits down and says, I got something really important to teach you. Here's the first thing that comes out of his mouth. He says, blessed are the poor in spirit. And he said, blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who are willing to tell other people, this is what I struggle with. And he says, blessed are those who are gentle, but yet strong. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. And you see, he is laying out, this is how to live so that you have the best life ever. And so the next thing he says, don't be hard-hearted. He said, but be merciful. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 7, he says, blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Now, this word mercy, we get that word confused a lot, I think, because we use it interchangeably with grace. It's not the same thing. Grace is what you need when you need it. Grace is God giving you something that you cannot earn, but you need it. And that's just a limitless kind of list of things that you need. And God's grace is infinite, and he just continues to pour it into our lives while we are here on this planet. Mercy is getting what you don't deserve. You earn something. And you should get what you have worked for. But mercy is, I'm giving you what you don't deserve. You're driving 85 miles an hour in a 35 mile per hour speed limit zone. An officer pulls you over. And he comes walking up to the window, and you know what you deserve. You deserve a citation. You deserve a fine. You deserve the revocation of your driver's license, whatever. That's what you have earned. There's a law. You violated the law. And he comes up to you and he says, is everything okay? You're driving very fast. And you say, yes, I just like the way it feels. And he says, well, you should slow down and be careful. And so today I'm just going to give you a warning. Have a great day. That's mercy. You got what you did not deserve. There was opportunity for something else to happen, but said, I'm giving you what you don't deserve. So let's talk about what does it mean to be merciful? What does that look like? And why should you be merciful? Now remember, this series is very application oriented. So not a whole lot of digging into one passage and walking through that passage, looking at a lot of passages and how this applies in our life. That's what we're doing in this series. So why should we be merciful? Well, first of all, because God is merciful to me. God's merciful to you. And Ephesians 2 verse 4 says, but God, being rich in mercy. Now, so get this, because of God's mercy for you, because of that, because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, he made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. Now, I'm probably going to say this 4 or 5 times this morning, but here's one of the things I think we really struggle with, is we have forgotten what it means to be lost. See, we're very familiar with what it feels like to be a Christ follower. And I think that part of the struggle that we have in that our commitment to Christ wavers, and that one moment we are so like, I am right with you. And then the next moment we're like this. And it's up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, is because we've forgotten what it means to be lost. Because we've forgotten what it means to have no hope, to be discouraged, to be disconcerted about things, to feel like we're lonely, to be afraid, to have no confidence of what our lives look like. We've just forgotten that. And so what we've got to do is we need to walk back into this remembering who we were and now who we are because of what God did in us for us. Because he was merciful toward us. So we need to be, because he was merciful toward us, we should be merciful toward others as well. In Matthew 18, verse 33, it says, and should you not have had mercy on your fellow servants, so I had mercy on you. And Jesus is talking about a parable here where some men were given something that they could either hold on to or they could share with other people. And the one that had no mercy toward other people said, I'm going to hold on to everything that I have. Jesus said, no, that's not the way to do that. Not only that, it's God merciful toward us, but also he commands us to be merciful. In Micah 6, verse 8, he says, he has told you, O man, what is good and what does the Lord require of you? So look, when you're reading this, when you're reading the Bible and you get this part, it says, he has told you what is good and what does the Lord require of you? You should really pay attention to that. Because that is one of the questions that people come up with over and over and over again. Well, what does God expect of me? What is God looking for me to do? Here's the answer right here. He says, but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God. Now, the Hebrew word that's used in this passage is the word hesed. And the word hesed means loving kindness. Now, that's not a word we use in English anymore, but it is to show mercy towards someone. It is to overwhelm them with a loving and kind heart. And so the old English way of saying that is loving kindness. And so it's the word hesed. And so, and it turns out that God wants us to be merciful so much that he says he would rather us be merciful toward people than at times to worship him. That sounds crazy, right? Let me show you this. Hosea chapter 6, verse 6, it says, for I desire steadfast love. It's the same word in Hebrew, hesed, the exact same word. What does and not sacrifice. I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. And so what God is saying here, he says, look, I would rather you be soft-hearted and tender-hearted with people. He says, I don't like it when you come and you say, I love you, Lord. I worship you. I can't live without you. You've changed me. You've shaped me. You created me. You've made me. And you are holy. Blessed are you. Worthy are you, Lord, of my worship and my life and my honor and all that is within me. And then you walk out of his presence and worship and you treat other people like trash. Or you say things about them that are tearing them down. He says, no, that's not what, he says, look, I would rather you not come worship if you're going to be double-tongued and double-mouthed. If you're going to say one thing here and then be a completely different person somewhere else. He said, I would just rather you not show up. Because again, this gets back to this thing. I believe that we have just forgotten what it means to be lost. And so we want all the mercy for ourselves. God, be merciful to me. God, help me. God, do something for me. But take care of me first and then these other people. And I understand the tyranny is urgent, and I understand hurt, and I understand pain. And when something's going on, like, help me now. I get that. But we can't do that to the exclusion of everybody else around us. That's not the way we're supposed to be living our lives. Because it turns out that Jesus quotes this verse right here twice when he is having discussions, debates, arguments with Pharisees. And he says, look, you're so wrapped up in appearing to be religious. You wear the right kind of clothes. You walk the right kind of way. You say the right kind of words. You show everybody how religious you are. You're following the rules. But then you don't care about anybody. And he says, God says, I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice. What's the big deal? Because we're going to all need mercy in the future. You cannot receive what you're unwilling to give. And there's going to be a time when you are going to need mercy. And here's the deal. If you have not already given mercy, when somebody tries to give you mercy, you're going to find that your heart is too hard, too proud to receive the mercy that God is offering you or a person is offering you. And you're going to say, I don't need it, because your heart is hard. You cannot receive what you're unwilling to give. This is James chapter 2, verse 13. For judgment is without mercy to one who has shown no mercy. If you can't show mercy to people, you're going to be a very good receptive of judgment. You're also going to be able to dole it out pretty well. But you're going to have a difficult time receiving mercy if you haven't learned to give mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. And not only that, but also, number 4, showing mercy blesses me and others around me. And it turns out that when you are a merciful person, that it changes you, that you become a much more compassionate person, that you are attractive and compelling to people around you. They want to spend time with you. They want to know you. They want to be around you. And the more merciful you are, the happier you're going to be. Proverbs 14:21 says, whoever despises his neighbor is a sinner, but blessed is he who is generous to the poor. See, when you look at your neighbor and say, I'm better than you are. I'm a Christ follower and you're not. You say, Arthur, I never think that. Maybe you never think that. Arthur, I never say that. Maybe you never say that. But do your actions show that? Maybe not your next door neighbor, maybe not the person who lives on your street, maybe somebody that you know, maybe somebody you have an occasional acquaintance with, maybe somebody you work with. And when we have this idea as believers that we are superior to someone, we've just become a legalist. You've just become a rule follower. You've just shoved grace out the window. You've just forgotten about mercy. You don't like the word legalist? Call it a moralist. I do a better job than you do. I follow better than you do. Proverbs 11:17 says, a man who's kind benefits himself, but a cruel man hurts himself. And so when we're merciful toward other people, when we give them what they don't deserve, it doesn't hurt us, it helps us. It helps them too. It doesn't just bless us, it blesses them. So lots of facets to mercy, lots of different ways we can look at it. Literally hundreds of passages of scripture about mercy in the Bible. But I'm going to show you 7 things really quickly about mercy. So let's look at these real quick. 7 ways to be merciful. Number 1, be patient with people that are different than you. That means, listen, everybody's got someone in your life and that person's a little quirky, a little bit weird. They say things that get on your nerves. You're like, just please stop it, right? I used to work with this guy, and every single morning, it got to the point I would hide from him because I knew what he was going to do. He's going, hey, Arthur, good morning. Hey, good morning. And he's going to say, has anybody told you they love you today? I'm like, stop it. Just stop it. You said that yesterday and the day before. I'm tired of it. I don't want to hear it anymore. I know you love me. I know God loves me. But look, right? And you got somebody kind of, and if that person's sitting beside you and sort of they're kind of quirky and going on your nerves sometimes, don't look at them. But we're going to be patient with people that are different than us. Ephesians 4 verse 1 says, I therefore, a prisoner for the Lord. It's Paul talking here. He says, I urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you've been called. So we ought to not just say it, but we ought to walk in a way that we have been called. If we're Christ followers, let's follow Jesus in everything that we do. He says, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love. Now, gentlemen, here's the deal. You love your wife, right? Ladies, here's the truth. You married a sinner. And he's a bigger sinner than you are, right? But he's not perfect. He's going to mess up. And she's not perfect. She's going to mess up. She's going to do things that get on your nerves. My short little wife, for 30 years, she's been hanging things on doorknobs at our house. I have no use for that. Because I want to turn the doorknob and go somewhere, but there's something in the way. And so occasionally, whatever is on the doorknob, I will take it off the doorknob and drop it right there. That doesn't go over well, just so you know. Okay? I think my socks look great on the floor. They're not going anywhere. They can stay there until the morning. I'll put them in the dirty clothes tomorrow morning. They look fine just where they are. She is of a different opinion. All right? There are like 2,000 things that I do that get on her nerves. There are like 2 things that she does, or 200,000, that get on my nerves. Right? But you know what makes a really good marriage? 2 really good forgivers. If you want to learn to love somebody, you learn to forgive somebody. That's how it works. And so the whole idea is that we've got to learn to show mercy by being patient with people that are different than us. And this is particularly important in families. It's particularly important between husbands and wives to learn patience with one another. It's particularly important for moms and dads to learn patience with their children, and for children to learn patience with mom and dad, to be merciful toward one another. It has been my experience that most marriages die a long, slow death. Very rarely is a marriage killed by a single catastrophic event or by 1 or 2 catastrophic events. Very rarely does that happen. But it's a long, slow death. It involves nagging and digging. Somebody's not patient with someone. And women, generally speaking, you're nagging and nagging and nagging. I'm going to change him. I'm going to change him. I'm going to change him. You are not. Listen, the guy that you know before you marry him is the same guy that he will be after you marry him. You cannot change him. God might, but you cannot. You don't have the power or the authority. You don't have the capacity to do that. So the guy, how he is the day before you married him is the day he'll be 30 years from now, unless God changes him. But you can't. And all that nagging, at some point he's going to say, you know what, I'm out, I'm done, I'm finished. You know what, I can go somewhere else. I can be miserable by myself, I'll just go. Or men, we don't nag, men, we dig. And sometimes it's passive aggressive, sometimes it's saying something verbally, sometimes it's ignoring, sometimes it's like, well, I heard you, but I'm not going to do it. And it's just this digging. And she says, you know what? I would rather be by myself and miserable than miserable with you. So I'll tell you what, I'll just head out the door. It's a long, slow thing. And so we've got to learn to be merciful toward one another. The more wise we are, the more patient that we will be. So we've got to learn wisdom. That's part of the reason we've been reading through Proverbs as a church this month. In James chapter 3, verse 17, it says, but the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. So as you are learning wisdom, and in James chapter 1, it says that we can ask that God would give us wisdom and he will give it to us bountifully. If you will ask God to give you wisdom, if you will learn to be wise, you will find that over time you will become more patient. And as you become more patient, you will become more merciful. It all kind of flows together because wisdom is full of mercy. People who are not merciful are generally very pompous and very arrogant, and nobody wants to be around them, and they're very lonely, and nobody likes them. The second thing about wisdom, it's another way to be merciful, is you help people around you that are hurting. If you care, you'll be aware. You see people that are hurting. Hey, what can I do to help them? In the New Testament, Jesus tells the parable of the Good Samaritan, and a couple of people walk past this man who's been hurt and has been robbed on the side of the road. And so what happens is someone else comes along and says, I'll help this person. I'm going to feed them. I'm going to get them some medicine. I'm going to make sure they have a place to stay. And because of that, they says that is the kind of love that makes a difference. Jesus said, when someone asks him, what's the most important thing to do? He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And you cannot love your neighbor as yourself without being merciful. Proverbs 3:27 says, do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it's in your power to do it. So what do you got to do? You got to look for it. It rarely just pops up. I think this is so important. I'll say this over and over again, but we need to be regularly praying, God, will you show me people today the way that you see them? God, will you let me see people today the way that you see them? And begin to let God open your eyes to those people around us who are hurting. It's not something we do out of obligation. It's something that we get excited about, right? In Romans chapter 12, this is a passage about spiritual gifts, and we'll talk about this at some point in the future. He says, having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, let us use them. If prophecy in proportion to our faith, if service in our serving, the one who teaches in his teaching, the one who exhorts in his exhortation, the one who contributes in generosity, the one who leads with zeal, the one who does acts of mercy with cheerfulness, that you do it because you love it. And somebody goes, but Arthur's not my gift. Doesn't matter. Everybody can be merciful towards someone. So you don't sit there and go, I don't have to be merciful to someone because it's not my gift. There are some people who are gifted spiritually with the gift of mercy. And so they can step in and they can minister to people in those kinds of situations. But just because that's not your gift doesn't mean you cannot show that tenderheartedness towards someone else. Another reason to be merciful is that we should give people a second chance. We should be willing to give people a second chance. I don't understand this. I have been, and I'm weird. I've been around church my whole life. Maybe church is relatively new to you. But I don't understand this. See, because here's the deal. If somebody lets me down in my family, I have a conversation with them. If I let them down, I have a conversation with them. We talk about this a lot when you're in elementary school. 2 7-year-olds, your son and another little boy, they've got some conflict going on. So what do? As a parent, you say, hey, let me help you guys with this. And then, they get to be in high school and there's conflict between a couple of people. And you say, well, okay, you guys let me help you with this. And so we do that. We do that in our marriage. We do that in friendships. We do that in our families. But why, when somebody says something at church or doesn't say something? Because we're family. Why is it when somebody says something at church, doesn't say something at church? Why do we go, maybe you'd be better off going somewhere else? Why do we have this tendency to drop them, push them away? Why don't we embrace them? Because if it was almost any other situation, we would. Why do we do that? I can't believe he said that. I can't believe she did that. We need to give people a second chance instead of going, they can't be trusted. You ever needed a second chance? I have, about a zillion times. Ephesians 4:31 says, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. Number 4, do good to those who hurt me. Now, this one's no fun. Here's the truth. Hurt people hurt people. If someone hurts you, they didn't just randomly pick you and decide to hurt you, but they hurt you because somebody else hurt them first, or maybe you hurt them first and you weren't aware of it. But hurt people, they strike out. They want to hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. And so it's having that conversation. It's saying, hey, what happened here? The people that we generally want to love the least are the people who need it the most. Who is it that has hurt you the most in your life? They need your mercy. Who has it hurt you most recently? Maybe Thursday night. Who is it? They need your mercy. Jesus talks about this in Luke chapter 6, verse 32. He says, if you love those who love you, what benefit is that to you? In other words, it's really easy to love somebody who already loves you. If somebody's already showing kindness towards you and doing great things for you and being generous and compassionate towards you, it's easy to love that person. He says, for even sinners, love those who love them. And he says, and if you do good to those who do good to you, what benefit is that to you? If somebody's somebody to do something good for you, I mean, Of course. And he says, even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to get back the same amount. He says, but love your enemies and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. Be merciful, even as your Father is merciful. Number 5, he says, be kind to those who offend me. Be kind to those who offend me. Now look, if you're a Christ follower, you're going to get offended. People are going to say terrible things about you sometimes because that you have determined that you're going to follow Jesus. And this shouldn't surprise you. Part of it is because they look at you and they realize that they're in the wrong and that they do not have a relationship with God through his son Jesus. And you never know when the Holy Spirit may be convicting them and changing them. But here's the other thing that goes with that. Is Jesus was very clear that he said, as time goes on, that although there will be more and more Christians, because in Matthew 7, it talks about this an ever-expanding kingdom and it never contracts. But what is going to happen is that people are going to say terrible things about you. And you should expect that because it says in the last days that people will be lovers of self. That they will have other gods, other things, other places that they love more than God. And so the world is not going to get better and better and better and better. We're not evolving into a utopian society, but actually what's going to happen is the world will get to such an extent that people here will be crying out for boulders to fall on them and kill them. Because the world is going to become an increasingly evil place. And then Jesus is coming to get us. And so it's not a time to walk around and pout, but it's actually a time to remember that there are going to be people who offend us. And so what we should do is we should reach out to them with mercy. And 1 Timothy chapter 1, Paul's writing here. He says, though formerly I was a blasphemer, a persecutor, an insolent opponent, but I received mercy because I had acted ignorantly in unbelief. And the grace of our Lord overflowed for me with the grace and love that are in Christ Jesus. Paul was a licensed executioner for the Jewish people. The Sanhedrin, the Jewish ruling council, gave him authority to go and find Christ followers and to imprison them, to punish them, and even to execute them. In Acts chapter 7, at the end of that chapter, Stephen is stoned for being a Christ follower. People throw rocks at him until he dies. There's a man, it says, sitting there holding the robes of the people who are throwing the rocks at Stephen. That guy's name is Paul. And he remembers what it means that God had saved him. He had been delivered. He used to be lost. And he said, I was a terrible person, but look at what Jesus did for me. And again, I think that we've just lost sight of that. I think that it's just not very important to us anymore. Jude chapter, only one chapter in Jude, so verse 22 says, and have mercy on those who doubt. Save others by snatching them out of the fire. To others show mercy with fear, hating even the garment stained by the flesh. And so it says we should have mercy on those who doubt. Now, those first 5, you probably know. You probably already knew that. So I got 2 more. And maybe you haven't thought about these 2. Number 6, reach out to unpopular people. Now, again, we talk about this in elementary school. Hey, you know, that little boy over there, nobody ever wants to talk to him. Would you go over there and play with him? We talk about that with teenagers. Probably somebody this week at beach camp will say, you know, that kid over there, he's all by himself. Why don't a couple of y'all go over and hang out with him a little bit? But then all of a sudden we become grown-ups and we're like, I don't need to worry about these unpopular people anymore. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about the people who you know that you just don't necessarily enjoy being around sometimes. Or other people have shunned them. And because other people have shunned them, you say, well, I'll kind of stay away too. But what if we were to intentionally build friendships with them? Especially those who are unbelievers. Because the truth is you can't lead your enemies to Christ, but you can lead your friends to Christ. What if we were to do that? Matthew chapter 9 says, and as Jesus reclined at table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners, and the tax collectors were considered to be by the Jews worse than someone who's a sinner, not a Jew, because a tax collector was taking money unethically from Jewish people. And they were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? What is he doing that for? Why is he with these kind of people? It says, but when he heard it, he said, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. That's Hosea 6:6. We talked about that at the very beginning today. It says, for I came not to call the righteous, but sinners. So, the question is besides yourself, have you ever had sinners in your house? Have you ever had them there? Have you ever spent time with them? Who do you know in your life that's far from God that you're hoping to build a relationship with? Do you know people who are far from God? Do you know people who are very different from you, philosophically, theologically, religiously? Do you know somebody who's a Mormon, a Buddhist, an atheist, an agnostic, Jewish? Someone's very different than you. Do you know somebody like that? Have you spent time with them? Did you know that if you start building relationships with people like that there are some people who will attack you for that? If you build relationships with people who are far from God, legalist and moralist, they will attack you and say, what are you doing that? You're not playing by the rules. You're not supposed to associate with people like that. They're going to pull you down. They're going to mess you up. Well, who's supposed to talk to them? We don't need the approval of the religious. We need a relationship with Jesus. I want us to be a church that's marked by mercy, that gives people second chances, that says, look, we love you. And yeah, you've done things that you shouldn't have done. Guess what? Me too. Me too. You've done things you're embarrassed about? Me too. You said something you wish you'd never said? Me too. Last way I'm going to talk about today, be merciful, is choose relationships over rules. Romans 13:10 says, love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. The law's not a bad thing. But we choose love over the law. We choose people over policies. We choose to have awkward conversations. We choose relationships. We choose to walk with people. We choose to help people. We choose to love people. We choose to be compassionate toward people. We choose to be generous toward those who don't have anything. We choose to be like Jesus. That's what we do. That's who we are. I love this passage because when people start saying, well, yeah, Jesus hung out with sinners, but you shouldn't. And I'm talking about some rubs my fur the wrong way. I mean, that's it. Matthew chapter 12, verse 1 says, at that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry, and they began to pluck heads of grain and to eat. But when the Pharisees, the religious people, saw it, they said to him, look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath. And that's saying, according to the law, the religious law, they weren't supposed to do that. And Jesus says, have you not read what David did when he was hungry and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God and ate the bread of the presence, which was not lawful for him to eat for those who were with him, but only for the priest? Or have you not read in the law how on the Sabbath the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are guiltless? In other words, that they're working on the Sabbath. He says, I tell you, something greater than the temple is here. And if you know what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice. Here it is again. You would not have condemned the guiltless, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. It's not about the law. It's about the relationships. So, homework this week. 2 things. First of all, pray that you'll see people the way that God sees people this week. Just real simple. God, this week, would you allow me to see people the way that you see them? Secondly, will you determine who will receive premeditated mercy from you this week? Arthur, what are you talking about? A minute ago, I said that we should show mercy to somebody who is unpopular. Reach out to somebody who's unpopular. So you know what the best way to do? You need to plan. You need to plan how to do that. You need to plan who that is and say, okay, what's my first step? I'm going to be merciful toward them. I'm not going to do premeditated murder. I'm going to do premeditated mercy. I'm going to give them what they don't deserve this week. Who's that? Who's that person? And you say, well, Arthur, I just don't know. I think that sometimes people give too much mercy and too much grace and people are too forgiving. I get that. You know, we don't want to enable someone. But I would rather err on the side of being too gracious, too kind, too loving, too forgiving. I would rather be that way because that's what Jesus did on the cross. He was too forgiving toward me. I know what I've done. You know some of what I've done. He was too merciful toward me. He was too gracious toward me. He was too kind toward me. In Titus 3, verse 5, it says, he saved us. Talking about Jesus. Not because of works done by us in righteousness, but according to his own mercy. That's why he saved us. Not because he owed it to us, because he gave us something we didn't deserve. He gave us mercy.